What actually moves the needle? Most problems have trends and patterns. Figure out the source of where they're coming from and stop doing that shit. I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to try something in order to find the right answer. It's just something I enjoy.
Welcome to the Masters of Business podcast with Daniel Beer.
Guys, this is Masters of Business. Welcome to the podcast. I have Nikki Miller on. She built and founded the Lead Syndicate, sold it to Movoto. Movoto being the most highly trafficked real estate portal, privately held real estate portal in the nation. And the thing that I really, really admire about you, Nikki, is you don't just play in that space, but you buy businesses in different spaces, different areas. I think of you and the conversation that I'd really like to have today. And of course, we could touch on, we'll go all over the place. But I think of you as somebody who is like a fixer, as somebody that optimizes business, that sees problems and solutions, that sees simple solutions that what others make complicated. So I want to welcome you to the podcast. Our audience is in every industry you can think of. We have people listening that are in the legal space, chiropractors, dentists, real estate people, mortgage people, you name it. And let's just start right here. I always like to get right into the meat of it, and we'll introduce you more formally in a moment. But business is sometimes, I think, a game of taking the complex, making it simple, or just realizing that it was simple all along and we made it complex for no reason. And so if you could speak to that, because I don't know many people, at least not in my life, that are as good at that piece of it, that part of it as you are. Where do you start when you're looking at a business? Like what are the components that you start breaking down to try to create these solutions to optimize and create the efficiencies that you do? And we'll, launch from there. As you have I think, tell me if I'm mislabeling you. I think that's your passion and that's your superpower.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you know me pretty well and know me inside business. And the best way to think about it is that the people who make really simple things complex are usually just avoiding something. And typically what they're avoiding is the work, right? And so my favorite question to ask myself is, what action am I avoiding by making this more complicated than it actually is? Like we like to make things complex as it makes us feel good. And if we solve problems that we create, it gives us something tangible that we can attach to. And it also allows us to avoid what is usually the actual hard work, because the things that drive usually look a lot like work and they're usually a little bit boring. They're not very sexy. So when I look up at business, I say to myself, okay, well, what actually matters here? What actually moves the needle? That's how you make a decision where if you're going to start on process or going to start on what you can measure, you ask yourself, what actually moves the needle? And as you gain more experience in asking that question, you'll also gain more experience on how people try to make that a little squishy or make it soft. And then you keep asking, right? What actually drives? So is it this or is it this? If I do this, will I be successful? If I keep doing that, will I be successful? And then you just start expanding that over and over and over and over again. And all of a sudden you look up and you have yourself a process, right? And then as business gets more complex, you have to iterate. And so then we start asking ourselves, do we own the process or does the process own us? And then you have to ask yourself, this thing that got us to this point, does this still work? Is this still what matters? Is this still the focus? Is this still what's driving us? And then we make decisions from there. So I don't think it's one specific thing. I think it's the willingness to do the work. And I think it's asking the questions and continuing to ask the questions until you actually get to the heart of the answer.
Well, so let's give that some context. Take us through a turnaround story, a business. I mean, I think you've gotten into everything from car business to plumbing and, home services. So take us into a turnaround story of what you saw, the issues that were there and how you approached it.
Yeah. So one of my favorite examples is I've got ownership in an automotive repair shop, like a car shop. And they asked me to come in and basically advise them and give them some consultation on how to fix their process. Because something that's evergreen, like a mechanic shop, typically, if done well, should make money, right? It's one of those things that can withstand any economy. Like people always need their cars fixed. There's not an abundance of them for the most part. And it's typically going to be less expensive to go there than to go somewhere like the dealership. So I look at something like that and I say, okay, well, you've got all the ingredients of something that could make money, of a business that's viable. Why aren't you? And so then I come in and I just start asking questions. And I remember when they first called me, they had been referred by another friend who basically said exactly what you said. They were like, call Nikki, she fixes stuff. And so I got in there and they said, well, what do you know about cars? I was like, basically nothing. I know how to turn mine on and I know how to drive it. And that's the extent to which I understand cars. And they're like, well, you won't be able to help us. I said, hang on. We could probably figure this out. Because my bet is that you don't need help learning how to fix cars. You're good at that thing, whatever it is. What you actually need help with is how to run a business. So let's start talking about that. Well, businesses, for the most part, all have a few ingredients, right? You've got to have a customer base. You've got to have a value proposition. You have to have a way that you get connected to people and stay connected to people. Looks a lot like the ingredients of a real estate business. And then you have to be able to iterate and build trust by doing the thing, whatever the thing you do is, consistently over time. And so I looked up and said, okay, well, what's the thing you do? We fix cars. Awesome. What are the things that come up most often when you fix cars? Oh, people get their oil changed. Like that's the thing that makes automotive companies the most money for the most part, something consistent they have to do. And I was like, okay, great. Well, how often do people get their oil changed? And they said, well, this many miles or this many months on average. And I said, great. Well, how often do you remind them that it's time to get their oil changed? Well, never. They just come in. I'm like, okay, yeah, 0 times. Like, how often does your mechanic remind you it's time to get your oil changed? Well, most cars do now, but they don't. They don't call you and say, hey, Nikki, it's been 6 months or whatever it takes. I don't even know. It's been 6 months since you got your oil changed. I'm betting that you're probably close to it. When's the best time for you to bring it in? How can we schedule this for you? Could we get a car to pick you up? So it's just going that extra mile to say, I'm going to think for you, consumer, which is really what consumers want us to do. I'm going to make your life easier, and I'm going to be one step ahead of you having to figure this out on your own. So that's a long way of saying you just go in and start picking apart processes and saying, what do you do well, which is whatever the industry you're in, right? Whatever your value proposition is. And then you start to ask yourself, how can I build consistency around that? How can I tell more people about it? And then how can I systematically implement it every single time? And then how do I get everybody on board?
So where did this all come from? Like, who are you? Where'd you learn this? How did you get the reputation to be called a fixer?
I don't know. I think it's just what I like doing. I like puzzles and I want to put them together. And every time I look at a business that's not working well or that's not efficient, I just see a puzzle and I say, this has pieces that all fit together and we're going to figure it out. And I think that when you can release yourself from having to be right, like I'm just willing to fail and I'm willing to be wrong and I'm willing to try something that feels too simplistic in order to find the right answer. And I think so many people spend so much time pontificating about what the right answer is. And I've already iterated like 6 or 7 times at that point. So I'm usually faster to action and I will keep going until I figure out the best way for us to do it. But I think it's just something I enjoy. Like, I don't really even know where it comes from. I just think when I see a problem in my own life, from my perspective, I've got a couple of choices that I can either sit in it and say, I release myself to this problem and I'm just going to let it happen to me. Or I can say, I have control over this and I'm in control what I can control. That looks a lot like fixing or building a system. And I'm going to have the forethought enough to know that most problems have trends and most lives have trends and most people have trends and patterns. And so I'm going to pay attention to mine and make sure that if bad things keep happening or problems keep arising, I'm going to go and figure out the source of where they're coming from and stop doing that shit.
Yeah, it's that ability to see patterns that I think is a big differentiator among just people. When you look at performance over a long term, there's most things right in front of us. Don't you think so? I mean, most of everything we need to know, we already have, or it's literally, we're looking at it. It's right in front of us, but we don't all see it. And so it's just, so, my hope always, Nikki, in these interviews, and you've already dropped, 6 or 7 of these, is that the audience understands, the listener understands that even in something like what you said, like how you're just faster to action, these little statements that are thrown in there, but that in and of itself could be a book. Like, high performers consistently move into action much more quickly, much more imperfectly than people that just don't ever get to that level. And I think it's a little bit of that. What did you say about complexity? It's just a way to avoid. It's a way to avoid action. It's what do you think that's rooted in, though? I mean, that has to be rooted in like protecting oneself or the ego. What do you think that is?
I think you hit it. I think it's a lot of ego because here's the deal. If something's too complex for me to take action on, or if I don't understand something, quote unquote, then I'm released from having to make a decision about it, which means that I can't fail at it, right? So the challenge with that, though, and I think what people don't see is I say to my team often, this is the vision of where we're going. And we have a business plan, but this is our business plan right now. This might not be our business plan tomorrow because visions tend to survive the future. Business plans don't. In other words, I don't know what's going to happen this year. I have no idea. So I built a business plan based off what I think I know and the information that I have, but it may not survive whatever comes to pass this year. And so I have to be nimble enough to make a change and to be wrong. And that's, I think, what people avoid is that once I make a decision, then I'm accountable to the decision that I made. And if it was the wrong one, then I'm quote unquote failed or I'm wrong or I'm stupid or all these labels that we add to it. But I always say failure is a funny thing because I think people have an incorrect relationship with it, and not in the sense of in our business, especially like you hear the like fail fast, fail often. I'm like, fuck that. Everybody hates failure. Like nobody likes to be wrong and nobody likes failure. But I've come to understand that failure has so much to do with when you time the outcome. And like I always use Michael Jordan as the example. Like if you looked at Michael Jordan the first day he picked up a basketball, you probably would have said he's not very good. But if you looked at him after he won his 6th NBA championship, you'd say he's the greatest player of all time. Check me, right? But like it all has to do with when we time the outcome. It's the same person. And it's just a matter of how long did he stick with it? How many iterations did he have? How much time did he give himself? How willing was he to do the work? All of those things then accumulate into eventually the guy's a success. And so I just learned to have a different relationship with it. You know what I mean?
So a lot of leaders struggle with, they have people that come into their world. They want to win. They want to play big. They want to, contribute and work hard. And some of them really need to. I mean, they've got things going on in their life where they need to, and yet they don't. They don't show up the way that not only did they say they would, but they actually, some of them genuinely need to. And some people, though, some leaders struggle with that more than others. Some people leave more of those people into their world than others, but any and all of us, you included, I would say, without me even having to ask, like still experience some of that.
Of course.
Why do you think that happens? Like, what is that? Because, I'm thinking of that because you're talking about Michael Jordan, and if you stick with it and the longevity and it depends on when you measure it. But what makes it that there's just people that will not, when you're sharing with them the path in your business, it's not just so that your business does, it's literally the path that will be good for them. You would think that evolution would have it that people will do what is good for them, and yet still there's something that gets in people's way.
I think you just said something really important, though, because you said what you think is good for them or what you know is good for them. And I think that one of the biggest traps for leaders is that to aspire for somebody without their permission. Because listen, like you're a great salesperson. And I bet you that if I was like, Dan, pitch me on coming to work for you, you could do it. And I would get fired up. And don't get any ideas. That's not what we're here for.
She sees work. Yeah.
And I would get fired up because you're a great salesperson. And great salespeople can also be sold. I'm a great salesperson, but that doesn't mean it's what's right for me. And so I think the step that a lot of leaders miss is that they sell a vision, and great entrepreneurs are great at selling a vision. But what they didn't figure out is, what does that person actually want? And does what they want fit in this vision? Because I've passed on some amazing talent before where I was like, oh, you would be incredible at this job, but it's not what you want. And so at some point, it might be tomorrow, it might be 6 months from now, it might be 10 years from now. At some point, you're going to pick your head up and you're going to say, I'm not happy here. And it won't be your fault and it won't be my fault. It'll be both of our fault, but mine if I default to always being the leader, because I just didn't ask the right questions. And I aspired for you based off your skill set and based off how I thought I could get you to show up in my organization. And so it's not how we want them to show up. It's, does it matter enough to you to show up how you need to show up to get what you want?
Really good. Really, really good. Let's dig into the Lead Syndicate. So you built this company, you end up selling it to Movoto. I think a lot of people listening, a lot of people building businesses, we all have this thought of, could I sell? Would I sell? How does that work? What do I not know that I don't know? So let's start with just giving an understanding of what the Lead Syndicate is. It is a business you built in the real estate space as opposed to the car space we spoke a moment ago. But you built it really different. You didn't just do what everyone else in the space does, me included. You built something really different. So I want to like just get a description of what that is, but then I want to dive in and explore how'd you see that? I want to try to understand, how did you identify the opportunity that was in front of everybody else, but no one else saw?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because everybody asks this, and every time I explain what we do, they're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, I know. But it looks a lot like work, right? And so what I saw as an individual agent, so what my platform does, like to give everybody the understanding before I jump into the how. So we are a platform exclusively and specifically designed for individual agents. So historically, what the real estate industry has delivered to individual agents was basically three options. You could build it all out yourself, take on all the overhead, take on the complexity, figure out all the systems yourself, or you could join a team and all that entails. And if you didn't want to do you didn't want to build it yourself, you didn't want to join a team and build somebody else's business, then you were left with doing like nothing at all, sort of struggling and limping along the way. That's basically what the industry delivered to us. And I looked up as an individual agent and was like, well, this sucks. I don't want to build it all out myself. I don't want to take on all the overhead. I don't want to join a team, but I also don't want to stay where I am. And so I looked up and realized there was literally nothing for me. There was no options. And so what I created was a platform wherein we're not like a buffet of options. It's not a bunch of tools for an agent to use. This is a plug-in, do it for you staff for your entire business. We coach the agent, we train the agent, we run their database, we do all their marketing, we do all of their transaction management, and we do their lead generation. So I call it the Big Five, and we comprehensively support their entire business. So you don't have to learn how to use us. We do it for you. We are a plug-in staff for your whole business, specifically and exclusively for individual agents. But this all really came from my lack of options. I just looked up and said, this is what I would want as an individual agent. I would want a platform wherein it partners with me and it does all of these things so I can do what I'm good at and I can still keep my brand and I don't have to take on the risk of the overhead and I can build as big a business as I want without all the stuff therein. Right. And that's how it got created. And it's funny because every time I explain it to people, they're like, this is what I wanted. I'm like, yeah, it's what I wanted too. That's why I built it. And that's how I knew that it would be valuable because I would have used it.
So how does it then, how big did it get? And what lessons did you take with you about selling is this the first business you saw?
First business I've sold. Yeah.
So what businesses or what lessons? I mean, I have to think there's so many things you did right and wrong in a first sale that when you're facing an opportunity like this in the future that, you'd look back on, because the beauty of something like this is a lot of people are listening. They're going to go through their first sale and you can help them just fast forward through some of those.
Yes. Let me help
lessons.
everybody learn from my pain. So the first one is, I had a mentor tell me a long time ago, Nikki, if it's not built for sale, it's built to fail. And I literally didn't
built for sale. Okay.
It's built to fail. And I didn't understand what he meant at the time. And my head wasn't even there. Like, I didn't build this to sell it. I built it to help people. So I didn't build it for sale at the beginning. And it was a huge mistake. Like, I had to, even someone who is as systematized and organized and who focuses on scale like I do, I had to do a lot of cleanup for that to even be possible. So that's my first piece of recommendation. Like, that's my first recommendation. Even if you never sell a thing, build it for sale. Keep everything organized, keep everything documented, track everything. It just makes that entire process easier. And if you never sell it, then you still have all the information you need to make really educated decisions.
Let's just stop there for a quick moment because it's important that you said that and you've broached on it. I want to go deeper there. If you're not going to sell you could be thinking, well, I'm never selling it. Okay, but if it literally would not be, and I'm just digesting this as you speak, what I hear you really saying is that if it's not built well enough, organized enough, structured enough to be able to sell it, even if you wanted to keep it forever, you are keeping something that you're keeping something that is not its best version of itself to the point where no one else would want it.
Yes.
So even if you're
And
keeping it, wouldn't it be nice to keep something that is so good that everyone else wants it, even if you never sell it?
well, and you can never replace yourself. And this is what I see. So, I mean, our industry, real estate agents, I see them back themselves into this corner. They do a lot of production, therefore think they have a viable business, and it's wrong. And I see them back themselves into this corner because the most important question I could ask is, what happens if you don't show up to work today? Right? Like, if you don't show up for the next year, is your business still going to run? And if it's not, then you don't have something that's saleable. And you don't have a business, you have a job. And make no mistake, like I got a lot of friends that have jobs and they love them and they like showing up to them, but just don't delude yourself into thinking you have a business you don't.
I mean, literally, Nikki, I always say, like, look, Tom Brady had a job. It was a
Yeah.
job in the NFL. It's okay to have a job. So when we're saying things like this, it's not that we are talking down on having a job. What we're talking
Not at
down
all.
on is not understanding what you have, on deluding
Right.
yourself, as you said, and thinking you have one thing and you actually had something else. That's the
Yes.
problem. It's not if jobs are better than, business, et cetera.
100%. And if I could go back and change anything or give a piece of advice in the sale, I mean, there's a million. We could do a whole podcast on just this, but if I could give any piece of advice, it would be that build it for sale, whether you intend to sell it or not.
And what does that mean, though? Like, really, what does that mean? If you could break that down a little bit further.
So think about it. Like listening to this could chat GPT this. What do you want to know when you're buying a business? Or what do they want to know when they are looking to buy a business? And it will literally give you all of the things that, whether you're going to raise capital or whether a company wants to buy you or whether a person wants to buy you or whatever it might be, it'll give you everything that they would ask for in due diligence. And you should make sure that you have all of that and that you are tracking all of that. Because everything in there, they're asking for a reason, right? They want to know how your business performs. They want to know what your numbers are. So if you're sitting there, if you own a business, no matter what the business is, and you're asking yourself like, okay, this is all great, but what should I track? Just chat GPT that. Give that a Google, and that will tell you everything in your business that you should track, and it will give you all the most important KPIs.
What's your feeling on the current business environment? Where the world's at right now? Do you feel optimism? Do you feel pessimism? Flatline, same as last year? Up or down? What's just your senses? What are they telling you?
I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask because I am eternally optimistic, and what I feel is a lot of chaos, and I get excited about that because chaos is a ladder, and when you can see through all of the noise and when you can see through everyone's emotions and you can be very strategic and systematic, it allows you to cut through all of those things and move exceptionally fast while everybody else is flailing around. So the example I always give here, Dan, is that if I was in the ocean or in a pool and everyone had been dumped off a ship and was drowning, what happens is, let me give you an even better example. I used to do triathlons, and one of the most dangerous periods in a triathlon is when everybody runs into the ocean because people are clawing at you, they're pushing you down, they're like trying to get in the front of the pack, because if you get in the middle, like you could literally drown. There's always boats around because people push people under the water. But the way
On
that
purpose?
on purpose, yeah, because they're trying to get in front of you. It's a race. We're here to win, Dan. Come on.
I mean, it's even a lot for me.
But I was a really fast swimmer, and swimming was one of my best events in triathlons, not because I'm actually a fast swimmer. I'm actually not that fast. But what I would do is I would swim deep and I would go underneath everybody else. So while everybody was up on the surface, freaking out and drowning each other and grabbing each other's swimsuits and pushing everybody aside, I was literally just underneath them. And so all that to say, if you can be smart enough, if you can set your focus enough, if you can quiet the noise enough to focus on what you want and to find the most direct path to get it, times like this where people are losing their minds and things are a little chaotic, like this is a ladder. You get to go wherever you want to go.
That's awesome. Wow. So you would literally be under these folks. I mean, trying to picture this.
You're
I
like
just,
looking up at these people and it's all you see is like splashing and bodies and it's chaos and you're literally just underneath them. That's literally the
wow.
fastest way to get through.
So one question I ask pretty much every guest that ever comes on here, Nikki, is, I guess it's just tied to a belief that I have, on that this is one of the most central, most important things that will help you propel or will help you fail,
Cool.
is your ability to decipher between opportunities and distractions.
Oh, that's a good one.
Something worth pursuing and a shiny object. And the thing is that like one might be one to someone and the other might be the other to the other, right? Like but how do you understand which of those two categories, the opportunities or apparent opportunities in front of you really are? Do you have a framework for that? How do you think about it? I'd really love to dive into that.
This is a great. I love that you asked this. This is probably one of the most important questions you could ask. And I'll admit that I failed on this for a really long time. And I would still say that I am, as someone who has the capacity for a lot and who likes to work, I still have to be very diligent about not getting distracted when it comes to opportunities, because the bigger your life gets, the more opportunities come to pass. And like I said, I like puzzles. So people bring me their problems. I'm like, oh, I can fix that. Like I can fix that and that and that. And eventually you just look up and you're busy achieving nothing. So the way I do it is foremost, I've got a very clear vision of what I want my life to look like. And specifically what I mean by that, like I always tell people, I'm not the biggest fan of when people ask me, where do you want to be in 5 years? I think it's the wrong question. What I'm very clear on is who I want to be in 5 years. And I'm clear on what she looks like. I'm clear on how she shows up. I'm clear on how she behaves. I'm clear on all those things. And I'm also crystal clear that if I do that, everything else will fall into place. And so when I look to my future self, I now just run it through the filter of, is she doing that? Like, is that something that needs to be on her resume? Is that something that she needs to be involved in? Is that something that helps contribute to that person? That's my first. I'll give you my second on this. My second is, am I willing to fail at it? That's been my newest one. Like that for me, for whatever reason, is the best barometer. And I'll tell everyone listening that I believe that there are two types of failure. There is experimental failure and there is operational failure. One is really good and one is just lack of execution. And so as someone who is an exceptional executor and something I very much pride myself on, I'm going to ask myself, does doing this get in the way of me executing on all the other things that I'm responsible for, that I'm committed to, that get me to where I want to go? And or is this just experimental failure? Like if I do it and it doesn't work out or I'm not good at it or whatever, is it okay? Like, is it just something I can say like, oh, I tried it, tested it, I'm good with it, right? And I use that as a barometer quite a bit too.
Best answer I've heard, by the way, out of any of these interviews. That's awesome.
I'm going to
Who
go
do
back
I
and
want
listen
to
and make sure
be?
you don't say that to everybody else.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I say to everyone. No, it really is. Who do I want to be? It's about asking, not where do I want to be in 5 years? Who do I want to be? How that person, and then letting that guide. And I really think your two frameworks work together in that, okay, well, who do I want to be? Okay, well, that fits, but now am I willing to fail at this? And will it get in the way of me executing on all that I'm already committed to? So that's excellent. So what's next for you? Who do you want to be? Where do you want to be? God damn it, Nikki. I was going to ask you where you want to be in 3 years.
I knew it was coming.
Jesus. So who do you want to be? Who is Nikki? When we look at Nikki, let's just use your time frame of 5 years from now. Who are we going to be speaking with?
I think she's a leader worth following. You know? And when I see, like, when I think about that, I think about a lot of people see leadership as this outside thing. right? Like I do this outside of myself. I lead this company or I lead these people. And I think of leadership as something that happens on the inside, like someone who shows up so strongly and who executes so diligently and who does things so effectively that you literally can't help but follow them. We have all met that person that like they are a gravitational pull and you literally cannot help but be in their orbit because they're so effective at leading themselves. It has nothing to do with you. It's how you feel when you're around them. And I aspire to be that.
You listening, all we ask is one thing. Bring you guests like Nikki Miller on a regular basis, week in, week out. All I ask is go and just like, subscribe, let the algorithm know that this is worth listening to so it'll feed it to more people so we could grow the audience so that we can get more amazing guests information. I hope this has made an impact on you. If you roll this one back, play it another time or two, there are real core tenets here that not only I think could affect your business, but also your life. Give Nikki Miller a follow online so you can see what she's up to. And of course, share this podcast. Let everybody know that they have a lot to learn. Share it out. This is Masters of Business. And Nikki, thank you so much for having joined us. It's really, really awesome to get to, Nikki and I, we're friends. We get to chat and, all that. But to actually see you just in action for full-blown business mode, it is no wonder to me why you've done what you've done. And I know that this will be, if we were doing this 5 years from now, I know that it'll be like, remember way back then? Like, boy, look at what I've done now. There's no question about it. Your trajectory is amazing. And I think you're a big inspiration to a lot of people. Guys, we're out.